The first tap of a conductor's wand. The first rivet in a mile-high tower. The master link at the genesis of the never-ending chain. The moment a single empty canvas meets a singular master stroke. There is no one thing. Because now, there are many. Because soon, there will be more. Because one is ever the beginning. Like the first link in an infinite chain, or the first rivet in the tallest skyscraper. The master stroke is found in the masterpiece. What will you begin?
You're muted. Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no. No audio.
Test.
It's an auspicious start to the show. I have to say a very special welcome to the 88th episode of the World Blockchain Roundtable titled MegaTexas.ETH. And this is a subject, as you all may know, is very near and dear to my heart. With us today are Joe, the founder and architect of Dragon Chain, Satoshi Shon, entrepreneur and everyone's friend, Lisa Mighty Davis, Team Mighty organizer and owner of the Mighty Lair, Dave from Den.social and creator of the world's very, very first metaverse geocache. I am for I am new grandpa and fellow denizen. And honestly, I gotta say, man, really glad to have you here because your comments are always awesome, and it's nice to put a smart face to a smart name. So
appreciate it. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So first, before we jump in, quick update on the World Blockchain Roundtable Lair ownership tokens from distribution from last week. This week we had each host receive 133 lot. Each topic contributor received 66. And last week's theme was blockchain in space, nominated by Y'all Weird, which is a freaking awesome topic. And he will receive 66 lot as well. And these ownership tokens, as always, come with perpetual passive income, free edits, and governance votes. And then World Blockchain Roundtable DAO quick update. We have February themes up for vote. There will be a link in the show notes, so please check that out. And then the theme of the week, again, is nominated by Jacob Wayne, MegaTexas.ETH. But before we jump into that, we've got our usual fun with current events. And before we jump into that, I'd like to hand over the floor to I Am For I Am to talk about the sojourn he took to Texit. So maybe you can tell us all what that is for starters.
Sure, I'll give you thank you. I'll give you a real quick spiel about it. First and foremost, I'm not a part of this movement. I kind of went on an investigative thing to look at. Was invited to go to one of the district meetings. It took place in Boerne, Texas last Thursday. I had been kind of following it along along the way over the past few years. And I found it interesting. There was only about 18 people that attended that meeting in Boerne. Boerne, Texas is outside of San Antonio, for anyone who wants to kind of get a reference to that location. I like
the boutique capital of Texas, by the way.
Pardon me?
It's the boutique capital of Texas. I don't know if you know
I was going to say, doesn't everyone know where Boerne is?
There's a ridiculous amount of boutique stores there.
Sure. And a Ferrari dealership, et cetera, et cetera. So it's
nice.
There's some money there. But the interesting point that I guess I would say coming from a different perspective is I years and years ago was part of the Tea Party movement. Many of you may remember that. And back in the days when I was conservative and hardcore kind of Republican, and have since long ago moved away from that. But I likened that just because of the age of people that were there. It tended to be a little bit more of an older crowd and less of a younger crowd. But going into it, the Texas movement to become its own nation state has been something that's been brewing and being developed years and years and years and years. This isn't anything new. And again, I'm not a part of that association. I don't, financially support them. But I do like what they're doing. I encourage it only for one reason and one reason only. I believe in smaller government. Smaller government is better. The biggest question that I always heard about it is, can Texas really secede from the Union? And this is debatable. There was a Supreme Court case that took place post-Civil War era, and it ruled against the ability for Texas, saying that Texas actually never left the Union even during the Civil War, and it actually cited the Articles of Confederation. Well, the Texas movement, and I would agree with them, says that any state could leave the Union simply because it's not in the Constitution saying that it's forbidden. But more importantly, shouldn't we have our own ability for self-determination? I would think that it's a right just as identical as free speech, and our right to assemble, and these kinds of things, is our right for self-determination. We should be able to choose who our leaders are, right? By vote. And this is the question of divorce and an amicable divorce. Could this happen? I don't know. The Texas movement right now is focused on one thing and one thing only. And that one thing is to get on the November ballot a referendum for the people in Texas, the citizens of Texas, us Texans. Do we want to secede or not? Do we want Texas to become its own nation state again? And that is kind of the basic principle to this. So it's not an immediate vote for immediate secession independence. It's being pushed in the state House and Senate to get on the bill. It's not sponsored yet. And they have a short amount of time. There's a lot of money, I think, that's pouring in outside of Texas against it. So they got a big row to hoe. I have the bill. I've gone through the bill. It's only 6 pages. It's real simple. Just put it on the ballot. Let us decide if we want to go from there. And then the mechanics will follow in the debate about how it would happen. Kind of like, think of it like Brexit, when England wanted to separate itself from the EU.
I think we're more worried about gambling in Texas now. That's definitely going on the bill.
Sure.
It reminds me kind of one of my favorite quotes from, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the film Kingdom of Heaven. It's a Ridley Scott film. It was really good. If you saw the full-length version, and if you saw the theatrical release, you were left confused. There was this quote, I hear in France, a couple 100 yards of silk will make a nobleman. Now, these bills are, sort of perfunctory, right? Because when you think about it, how on earth could the constitutional republic we have today exist if not for our ability to dissolve the Articles of Confederation and as states bring about a new federal system?
Bingo.
So there's no a priori power in that thing to stop.
It's like asking your ex if you can leave.
Back. It's ultimately a 10th Amendment argument, which you never see it used.
There's
but it
so
does
much that you've unpacked here. From what I understand, is that Texas was the only state, or one of the only, that was actually asked to join the Union. So we kind of dictated terms, and when we did, we dictated that we could leave at any time. There's no
bit of both.
There, no red tape, nothing. Thank you very much, and we'd leave. But the federal government, ever since Texas joined, has always tried to get rid of that. And I think it was under Clinton that was a really dick move. Like it was after Katrina or something, and aid was being withheld until we literally got rid of that. And so I think under Clinton we gave that up, just from what I understand. So now, but what I've seen in the past couple years is these greater movements. The Greater Idaho movement is, trying. There's or a lot of counties in Oregon are trying to secede and become part of Idaho. Huge up there. My best friend lives in Oregon, and it's like the biggest thing on the news all the time. and it's because it's going, it's moving forward. And I told them no one knows about this, and it's like, what are you talking about?
I've been following it.
It's like it's on the news every night, man. I was like, in Oregon,
right?
I'm telling you, the rest of the world doesn't know that's happening, because if that got out, and it has over the past few years, but now they're talking about California rewriting the basically doing the same thing. I forget what it's called. It's a great or something. They're basically
be a funny state.
They were going to talk about like Northern California and Southern.
Sure. Jefferson, the state of Jefferson for Northern California.
They're literally talking about just getting rid of San Francisco and LA and Hollywood, almost making that its own state.
Make a great money laundering channel.
New Hampshire has been trying to working on it for a long time. So,
city states as well. If I could comment real briefly on what you mentioned, Texas is the only state in the union that I understand was actually a nation prior to its joining.
Previously.
When it did join, remember, it was kind of bankrupt. So it was also looking for a little bit of a handout by joining the Fed, the union, shall we say, pre-Civil War days. Okay.
Right.
So it was a little bit of both. But in that contract or in that treaty, as I understand it, and it's been a long time since I've read it, there was a specific phrase addendum in there that said that Texas had ability to leave the union if it so chose, simply because it was a nation prior to. And there's two things. Actually three. There's a professor out of England, and forgive me, I forget his name, and I did buy his book and I haven't read it yet, but he wrote a book about how to form your own country. And I thought it was very fascinating. He says it's really based on culture. Does Texas have its own culture? Absolutely. Does the world really know about Texas? Yes. A lot of Texans call themselves Texans before they call themselves Americans. California is kind of thought that way as well.
I do that because we're definitely in the international space.
Oh, right.
Everyone's like, "Oh, you're from the USA." Like, well,
we're also the 9th largest economy in the world. Some say it's 11. Give or take.
That's a big thing, because everyone talks about Brazil. That Brazil is the huge powerhouse. And I always make the point, well, Texas is actually my country. It's got a bigger economy, bigger GDP than Brazil. Right. And that blows people's minds.
What's funny to me about the whole thing is there's this counter argument that you hear sometimes to this, where like, even if you could, why would you? Because then you'd be subject to all these, border controls on trade and all these tariffs and all these, these policings and all these new things from the United States that you didn't have before, is where the record kind of slides off for me, where the needle just sort of whoop, because right now sort of the world we're living in is very constrained. It's almost as if there is trade interdiction between the borders of the states, practically, in terms of the kinds of economic distortions that the federal government puts on the states. So it's a hollow argument to me, but it's also kind of a funny one.
Well, let's look at also the root a lot of Texans are and a lot of Americans are very dissatisfied with Washington, D.C., right? They don't feel they have that representation anymore. And that's kind of the sentiment in Texas. I would say that, yes, it would be predominantly more Republicanish. It's definitely more conservative, folks that are involved in this type of movement and other movements around the country, like Eastern Oregon, Northern California, et cetera. But
or the Free Staters in New Hampshire, their approach.
Texas is the only state in the union that flies its flag at the same level as the U.S. flag, because it was also once a nation.
So what you're saying is culturally they're ready for
Texas, and don't mess with our barbecue. And I've been here 20 years. I got here as fast as I could, and so I consider myself a Texan. And I'm torn about this whole thing about supporting and getting involved in Texas, simply because I'm more of an agorist. I believe in decentralized systems, decentralize everything. Right?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe the first part in becoming decentralized is to disassociate or to break off from this big. And I think the big thing I wanted to make a point about this is Greg kind of hit on it. There's this Mandela effect where, I'd say 40 and under in definitely the United States, but pretty much the world, they don't see the Union for what it is. It was 13 colonies who fought for independence, and there were 13 countries. When it was all said and done, we beat the biggest empire in the world. These were 13 countries that came together in this crazy idea that we could all just become partners in a union for this just massive strength to like unify a continent. Like in, Europe is Europe, but it was splintered. It was, principalities, and it was all, it wasn't a union. And now you look at like the EU, all these things that people, the idea of the League of Nations and the United Nations and all, none of that was even a pipe dream until the United States did it. But now people don't think of the United States as united countries or United States.
Right.
They think of it as just a country.
You mentioned
that,
the EU, man.
That there is no separation.
And there's another really interesting point you make there, Sean. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Treaty of Westphalia, but the modern nation state allegedly emerged from the 1648 treaty, right, where the idea of this composition of country and political system created this thing called a nation state that you could put borders around, and it had sovereignty independent of its rulers, right? Like, it was a weird idea. And then we sort of stuck with that model in our heads, and we're still kind of taught that model in our heads, even though it really hasn't been like that since since really post World War I.
Yeah, Dave, that's kind of what I was going to say too.
Say, Dave?
Well, kind of exactly what Greg was talking about, where I go to Europe pretty often. My wife's family is there, so half of my family's in Europe, so I go there pretty often. And the European Union and the participating nations, they are still very much sovereign and individual, and they have their own cultures and they have their own languages, but they're also very much like, there's nobody at the border. You can come and go as you want. They're in a union. They're in, and it seems like a better or a better, maybe not better, but it seems like what the U.S. the idea of the U.S. was, that we've lost a little bit, to where we have this sort of idea that, the borders are there on the map and the driver's license has a different state name on it, but really it's all just under the federal government at this point. You know what I mean? Right. That kind of thing. And
that's brainwashing government school stuff.
And who's to say there can't be like, 50 more license plates or 1,000 more license plates? Like, what's wrong with the sovereign nation of Pretoria existing? Like, if you want to pull the Family Guy reference out, right? Like,
you guys didn't. You guys mentioned Oregon, but I just talked to a friend in Washington State who told me they're passing these assault weapons bans, and it's it's going to start down that path, and secession, because they're talking about breaking off to various parts of Idaho. But the odd thing is that effectively Washington State's very I don't want to even say red or blue, but it's very conservative, especially with ownership of Second Amendment rights are concerned. Except for one city or one county, either way, that there's one little place that has enough people that effectively run and or ruin the entire state. That's why I left, right? And and you can go out and you can go in most parts of Washington. It's beautiful, but you go into Seattle and you're talking tent cities and drugs and needles and everything else. So it's like effectively they'd probably be better off forcing secession of those cities, right, into their own little.
Agreed.
There is though, Joe, a culture of rejecting and receding from a system. There, it's just not the government, right? They're pro-government typically, but there's a very like walking the walk style culture of rejecting corporate control of stuff, which is a different animal. Sometimes it's the same animal, but there's definitely a shop local. Let's not give our money to out-of-state corporations that don't actually care about us, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they're applying that mentality to a different thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if obviously there's overlap, extreme overlap, but it's something that I noticed when I was in Oregon, for example.
The other thing that's so odd here that a lot of Europeans don't usually recognize, because we spoke to a really smart guy in Switzerland a month and a half ago or so, and he was basically just beside himself. Why have you guys allowed this? It's like, and he was specifically talking about financial regulations, SEC stuff, but seeing the amount, the level of corruption that is going on in our federal capital, he's like, hey, you wouldn't be able to do that here, he said. And I said, well, that's a much smaller nation there. You could effectively ride your bike. Not necessarily, not really, right? But you could get to in less than a day's drive where you need to, right? Here, West Coast is, it's a long way to carry a pitchfork, right? So it's just a weird thing.
You can fit most of Europe inside of Texas.
Yeah, that begs for the argument for these breakoffs to go back to nation states. Where there is more accountability, where there's not someone sitting in DC where we don't know if they showed up or not to vote or not, where they're going to school with your kids, they're at the grocery store, they're at church with your family, and you can hold them accountable. I think about my brother-in-law was from Finland, and when my sister went over there to visit, and she was like, it's the cleanest, nicest place, and everyone's so polite and whatever. And she was talking to her husband, they were newly married. This is, 20 plus years ago. And he was like, yeah, because everyone knows each other and there's accountability. It's a small country. Yeah. And I think about that when Dave was talking about in Europe having, there's no one at the border. Well, we don't have the huge, they don't have as much of disparity in, I would think, and I'm not that educated about all that, in the European countries for the financial differences that we face in Mexico and here, and then just the vast size of our country.
They definitely have borders. I was talking about within the EU specifically. There's definitely borders if you're not a part of the EU, to go back and forth.
Well, and the other bit of it is the fact that how do I say it? The way we're set up right now, it is ideally efficient for lobbyists because they can all go. Yes. They know your representative better than you, right? Your representative maybe comes in a few times a month to the hometown, if that, and effectively the whole place is run by lobbyists and special interests and inside baseball stuff, and it's kind of ridiculous. If they separated it, it would be much better. You can still,
I think
remain in a union.
We dance around the real elephant in the room constantly, and I'm one of the only people that bring it up. And even I get nervous bringing it up, but it is the violence part. I think that it's a very radical conversation to talk about a secession of a state. It's crazy. It's huge.
Sean, let's pretend that when we're talking about that, we're really talking about banana peels.
Banana peels.
Let's come up with a YouTube euphemism so that we don't get deboosted.
The reason for the conversation is that there's radical stuff going on around it that's pushing these, regular. I just want to go to work and pay taxes, and it's pushing those people to extreme. I remember years ago, those people, the regular Joe, they always drew this line, the bathroom thing years ago. Well, you better not be, in my, the bathroom of my daughter. I'm gonna kick your ass. I'm gonna, and then no one's doing anything. People complaining, people post memes. But no one's going in there and beating the crap out of the guy, in the changing room.
That seems to be the culture.
Angry,
talk shit, not do anything.
That's exactly it. Everyone's talking shit, and no one does anything. But it's getting so bad with especially you don't mess with cats and don't mess with kids. It's people are getting pushed to where there is going to be a straw, and it's probably going to be the Second Amendment people.
I think
Well,
it's the life vests.
yeah, I
In
think this is a
Australia, there
good.
was a video of a man that his wife had died, or his partner had died from wearing a life vest, and he tracked down the doctor, was beating on the car, bust the window open, and like had to control himself from, because once he got the window bust through, I think it surprised him, and then he like you could see him like holding himself back from not hurting the guy, and he like finally walked away. And that's in Uncle Cliff High's data about people so enraged and going after these doctors and healthcare providers. And
But
so I think
the
that'll be the
regular
tipping
people
point.
are being pushed to where that conversation has to happen. Hey, either we're going to have to have a boogaloo,
Sean,
or
let's
we're
look
going
at
to have
this.
to fix it in another way.
I think this is a good pivot point to current events, because we can take a look at some of these things that are pushing people. Right. Pick a news item right now, and let's talk about this from the standpoint of like, if we the first part of our show was the introductory paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, right? The people, either through the political units that they have individual agency in, or through the fact that they own themselves and they can decide where exactly they want their allegiances to lie, because that's the essence of private property. And all of that fun stuff, right? Like, we can go into exactly the whys, but we all agree that we have the right. So what are the grievances?
I just want to throw one quick thing out there. As the tree hugging hippie of the group on violence, I don't have the answers, but there's something here with digital stuff that we're doing today that we've never been able to do before. I don't know exactly what how exactly it's assembled and applied, but there seems to be an opportunity, and maybe this is, on today's topic too. There seems to be an opportunity to execute a sort of like a virtual or digital boogaloo that doesn't necessarily require the violence that traditionally comes with things like, reestablishing sovereignty and things like that. So I wanted to throw that out there.
Well, I think
that's completely fair.
And
as long as we're tossing perspectives out, I want to toss mine out too, because I'm a big fan of Libwetti. The idea that the best way to dethrone a tyrant is to stop obeying them, just to cease following the orders, just to cease taking it seriously. The ultimate form of nonviolent resistance is to just ignore them. Imagine if everybody, quit, for instance, sending a check to an agency that says you have to. I'm not encouraging people to do that, but let's say they all did. Well, they'll come after you with done.
It's a very interesting point that you bring up there, because what we killed and destroyed was the class system. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but we've really brought that back.
And we brought back a caste system.
Yes. Yeah, because there was a law passed in some state. I think I talked about it in the show, where I remember reading the story, and you can kill a police officer, or you can shoot a police officer, kill him, if they're illegally entering your home. And I was like, why did they pass the law for that? That's already a thing. And my son, he went to college for he's going to be a U.S. Marshal, and I was like, why is this a law? He goes, oh no, it's most states you can't do that anymore. He said most states, you can't fight against the police if they're illegally entering here. He goes, yeah, police are protected now. Not just you can't sue them, but you can't. So it's a different class.
Yeah, even if they break in and harm you physically.
That's what we always made the point of, that it couldn't happen because our military was people, just regular people. It wasn't this, hey, you're just above the peasants, you'll lose your status, your class. And we've made that with federal agents, and then it goes down to regular police. And I think if they do that for the military, that's like the ace up their sleeve that they think they have. I don't think it'll work, because I think that in the end, our military is our citizens, and it wouldn't work. But I think that that seems to be the plan.
Supposedly they've war gamed that, by the way.
Only a minor quibble.
Oh,
I have
they
to say,
war
guys,
game
real
shit you wouldn't
fast.
believe.
From a
Yeah.
purely legal standpoint, you still have the right to defend your property from anybody who invades it with uninvited. No matter where you are, that's pretty much the common law.
In practice,
The
though,
trick is,
I know what you're saying.
Is they have a privilege under law, which is a different thing from a class protection. They have a privilege under law to do that to you, and thus, if you resist it, and it was lawful on the part of that,
I want to ask you something,
right?
Greg, because
then
Lisa said
they
something
can
to me.
do it, and you can still be punished for it.
Lisa brought
Like
something up
if
to
you
me.
kill them when
Is
they
she-
come in,
What's
the
the difference
privilege
between
overrides your
qualified
right.
immunity, Greg, and
Sovereign
immunity?
immunity. So, sovereign is that the state cannot be tried in its own court. So governors, not governors, I'm sorry, like when the Congress people were up there raising their hands, swearing an oath and all this, I was looking into it and I was like, what are you guys swearing an oath to? Where's the Bible, whatever? And they were like, oh, they don't have to, they're swearing an oath to the Constitution.
Yeah.
When they were being sworn in. And I was like, well, I didn't see the Constitution anywhere either. And no one said anything about the Constitution when they were being sworn in, but whatever. You're supposed to assume that. And then I started looking into, how they'll, cops can, like, in the line of duty, if they kill someone, they can't be held accountable, blah, blah, whatever. Well, then I was looking into like these, as far as the thing that happened in 2020, where some people chose some things and then, maybe a different outcome happened. And then the people that were in charge of that were supposed to validate it in some way. They can't be held accountable for that because of this sovereign immunity.
That is that is a legal fiction created by the courts that doesn't really exist except in the minds of the judges that decide to uphold it. And if you really want to get down to it, we probably threw out stare decisis in 2000, so they can do whatever they want. Like if you want to go back to, I don't really want to turn this into a discussion about Bush v. Gore, but like
on current events, I'd like to mention that the Cowboys lost to the San Francisco 49ers.
Yes.
Bread and circus. Bread and circus.
Current events,
That's right.
also,
We have to move
I think worthy of note.
By the way, Coliseums to keep people out of the real,
bread and circus. On the subject matter, I think that's one of the biggest issues we have is that our system of law, it's not a system of it's of laws, not men. And like, I don't think that's true. There is no system of laws. There is no system of men. Law is so freaking mixed up and crazy. They can interpret however they
statutes.
want.
Yeah.
And it really matters who you are. If you're the son of a fucking senator, especially of a particular party, you're going to get off with murder, or anything.
Or the son of a senator who became a vice president, who became a,
it's like you can get away with anything if you
teleprompter
have the right blood.
So
that's the beauty of, I think, what this subject matter, if I understand it,
though that said,
the vision is the MegaTexas.ETH. If it were to be doing what we're all talking about doing, but doing it first in a virtual way, so that we can just start following these laws that we can actually read and understand ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Which will be interpreted by something that is actually objective, which is code, right? So, anyway,
well,
that's what's needed. But
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and if you look from and Sean, I don't mean to invalidate your points, because I sincerely believe that there may be just cause to organize group hugs and hug the living love out of anybody who gets in the way of anyone who wants to be free, right? If you take my meaning, but I also am a peace advocate, and I think that there are nonviolent ways to do it too that may be idealistic, but
I am too. But I think that I think that
peace-loving person, I'm going to hold on to it.
I think if you break a plate, you can put it back together, but if you smash it into powder, you can't. There comes a point where, and you have to take responsibility. I've been saying this for a while. We messed it up, and we allowed it, through our indifference and lethargy, and we let it get so bad that we have to start over, I think.
This may be a great segue into MegaTexas, actually.
I also want to talk about the stuff on the WEF said that also.
Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Crazy
because
bad.
WEF stuff, like, we got to throw that in.
But
Go for it.
But what started the whole thing is I was watching Congress get sworn in, and it bothers me that all these people, soldiers, every cop, every judge, so many people swear an oath to uphold the Constitution from enemies within all, but 90% of them, and that's given a lot, don't know what the Constitution says. They didn't read it. They don't know what they're swearing to uphold. And what got me is that Congress swears to uphold the Constitution, and then they pass laws which go to the Supreme Court and are unconstitutional. So to me, that means they have broken their oath. And this is the conversation that I had with Lisa. I brought up, these people have broken their oath. Why aren't they held accountable? And that's when she started talking about the sovereign immunity. And then, like she said, it's not a real oath because they don't have to.
They don't have to
literally.
Well, I mean, there's also this element of it that's covenant.
It's like they're crossing their fingers behind their back the whole time.
Because they can't be held accountable for breaking that
other
oath.
People can break, and you keep its faith anyway.
Can I give you a direct example? I mean, it's like, okay, I spent a lot of time working as a contractor at the FBI, and I remember in one particular case there was a project, and they were having us put together a demonstration of some of the things we were going to be building on the back end, and as part of the demonstration, they needed a user interface, right? Well, we didn't have any web designers on staff, so we were like, okay, we'll just throw something together. It's ugly. It's like, oh, one of the guys went and grabbed something. And I looked at it and it's like, did you build that? And he said, oh, no, I just grabbed it over here. And I'm like, well, we can't use that, right? And they were ready. And I say all the way up, our management was ready to just push through with it. I was like, wait, guys, you can't use that. It's copyrighted material. We don't own it. And they were like, oh, but I don't think it's like, guys, this is the fucking FBI. And if I didn't have to sit and watch every goddamn movie that I watch warning me about this shit, I probably wouldn't say anything. And it's not even that I'm scared, but it's like, good God, can't we at least follow the shit that it's like, oh, it doesn't apply to us, right? And I will tell you, there are so many people there that don't give it. That was the point I was making
with Lisa, that it's not like they're passing a law and they don't know. There's so many people on their staff, like, hey, I don't think this is a good idea. Hey, this is not could be. And I think when we do redo stuff, however we get there, I think there has to be account. Imagine if you vote on a law that's found to be unconstitutional, you could get 30 days in jail. Oh my God.
Yeah.
1 week in jail. It's a Class A misdemeanor, not a felony, but you could go to jail for 30 days.
That would be a great way. That would be a great way to vacate Congress. They'd all be in jail for 30 days on a continuous cycle.
But if there was any held accountable for that, there's no way they would pass. I'm not voting on that.
And this is why I'm all about autocracy deep down. But
I'm all about Day of the Road, guys. Just to put that out there.
That was a funny story, Joe, and I believe every word of it that you told there just now. Because I remember when I was we used so much software that nobody ever paid for. It was ridiculous.
Oh, we had we wanted to write I have this entire idea for a sitcom where it's what I experienced as a contractor at the FBI and DOD. Wow. You know what the name of it is? Close Enough.
Close enough.
There's one. I kid you not. We joked because one of the project managers was over in the corner yelling at an intern and pointing at him. I was like, what the hell? What the hell happened? Well, he didn't have his license to Microsoft Project. And he needed the Microsoft Project. We didn't have enough licenses for it. Yeah. He needed it. He used it. You have to install it. He was yelling at him. And the guy, he's like, I'm not installing it. Right. And I was just thinking, man, you know how funny it would be? The FBI has to raid the FBI because Microsoft licenses are being stolen.
That's a good sitcom premise. I would call it. Did you guys have the same phrase that we had?
Kafka trap.
People used to say good enough for government work.
Yeah.
Basically.
Close enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good one.
So
WEF, I saw, and I haven't seen this anywhere. I might be wrong now, but it was days ago, and it was this African guy on a small YouTube channel, which is good English, but just a thick accent. He was talking about. I was going to try to look it up and have it for you guys, but it was this lady from the EU who's in charge of like I forget what her title was, but she was being interviewed, and that's another crazy thing is how they don't hide it anymore. They're very just, here's what we're doing. This woman was talking about Musk, and she basically said he has to comply with us. We're the ones who have the power, and we're going to sanction him. We he had high hopes for him, but he's being very difficult, and in the end, he'll have to comply with what we tell him to comply with.
Well, was it Ray at the WF this week that said that I believe that big tech and government agencies are working well together, something against the people or something, like it was some just outlandish.
Isn't it wild to hear them talk about this kind of stuff where, you know, I'm pretty naive a lot of times, and I'll just be like, they don't really see themselves like that. They probably think they're doing, you know, something. But then you see like recordings of them talking to like the lady you were talking about, Sean, was just like, well, we make the rules and he has to come we'll make him. And it's like,
she literally said, we will make sanctions.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean,
or when they self-reference themselves as the elite, you know, it's like they fully are aware. Like they're not.
The reality of the matter is the people that do make the world move. And
this
I'd
guy,
like to see that lady figure out how to stop Twitter.
This guy's like, Elon Musk is a private company in America.
Yeah,
it's the EU. I mean, it was like he's like,
it's kind of like
sense.
It's kind of like when a reporter asks, "Well, that pipeline is owned by Germany. How is the U.S. going to do anything?"
VPN exists.
We'll make sure. You know, it's like. They totally know that they're operating on different rules than everybody else is operating.
I mean, like when Joe said, you know what? And then that prosecutor got fired. Or otherwise, I'm not going to bring that $1 billion.
Well, they laugh and say stuff like, oh, we came, we saw, he died. Ha, 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 ha. I mean, shit like that. It gets out, and then it's like, I don't know if it's somebody was asking it on a different show. It's like, is this shit recent, or is there just more cameras around now?
Right now, Elon Musk is playing nice. What if he turned the weapon they built to point at half of this country and half of the world's belief systems on and pointed it back at them? What if he convinced everybody else to do the same in Silicon Valley? It wouldn't take much to have the oligarchy of the FANG stocks, right? Like it just wouldn't take that much. It would take 5 people in a room deciding to do it.
When whacked.
Right. And that's a little terrifying, but it's also something that they have to take into account, because if they started having to face their own demon, they wouldn't stand a chance against it.
His dad
wouldn't even be good allies in Web3.
I think it was his dad that said he was afraid for him at this point.
Yeah. They'd be like cinder blocks around our ankles. We have to explain shit to them. When you have
like entities like the EU basically threatening you with sanctions, I mean, that's something that you talk about for countries
with a nation state, right?
You know, it's not. It's this guy's a pain in the ass. I mean,
but that was predicted by if like I'll bring it up again. The Sovereign Individual was written pre Y2K, and it predicted exactly that certain individuals would become so individually wealthy, and they'll be treated by other nation states as a sovereign state themselves.
Right. And you know, it's also
this is a really great segue to MegaTexas.
Yeah, it's a pendulum, because you know, we roll towards, you know, the EU and the United Nations, and then we pivot over here to more, you know, nation building, and I'm my own nation. We're our own country, and we're not going to succumb to the EU. And so it's a pendulum that kind of goes back and forth. And also the fourth turning and individual sovereignty book that you mentioned, you know, Dave.
I used to really believe in the pendulum. but I've been waiting for it to swing back. I literally thought
thing about all this,
the women, when biological males started going into women's sports, that's the pendulum's going to switch. And it doesn't. It always surprises me.
Well, Sean, right now there are
double down.
sheriffs and U.S. district attorneys that are working together to.
That's a big thing. 90
criminally
Joe
charge
made
people.
The point I brought up the Second Amendment, the laws that are passing, and that is what Greg was talking about, just not obeying. 90% of sheriffs in I think it's Illinois, they're not going, and the press has covered it, but they talk about it like there's a couple crazy, county sheriffs that are not going to enforce the law. Over 90% of sheriffs in the state have refused to enforce the law.
And it could get even better than this. This is where we get into the MegaTexas territory, right?
Bingo. I like to hear about this.
Because at its premise, the idea behind MegaTexas is Star Wars on the Death Star. Grand Moff Tarkin says, "We are the ultimate power in the universe." And Leia turns to him and says, "The more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers." We don't need to put things back together from that powder. We don't need to reassemble the bugs from the powder that they're secretly sneaking into EU food starting today. I did throw that current event in still.
Good job.
That's true, by the way. Look that up. It's terrifying. The thing about MegaTexas is it's the sand assembling itself. It is us taking back what is ours at a level that they cannot hope to control. Ultimately, I guess this is question one. MegaTexas is about marshaling local power to exercise our ultimate right of self-determination, the right to ourselves. We own ourselves. We decide where ourselves go. No one can reach in and take that from you, right? Like whether you believe that comes from your creator or whether you believe that comes from the fact that anybody tries can deal with you lying down and being a pain in the ass all the way to the bank, right? Whether you want to take it in pragmatic terms, spiritual terms, however, you own yourself. Meaning, if you can marshal enough sand, you can blast away any power structure. So how would this work in practice, right? How do DAOs work? Right? They marshal resources around sort of a crowd fund to do something, right? So let's say you crowdfunded enough money to win a national election and then you turned it on your school board. That is the idea of MegaTexas. The idea of MegaTexas is that you can exit with that power, right? Your county, your town, a chunk of your town that decides it wants to become its own political unit can exit and join whatever kind of political unit it wants. And if you're willing to stand on that and you have the resources to spend on that, you can buy that in this country, in this world. And that's ultimately what this is about. This is about taking back power using the tools that they created to take power away.
One of the cool things about all of this stuff, MegaTexas included, is that there's something to appeal to a lot of different types of people that find different things important. For example, one of my favorite things about MegaTexas as a concept, and I hope we do it, but it's like the same thing I like about Bitcoin and Monero and stuff as a financial instrument. It makes it possible to build something that instead of strictly starting over in the physical world with nothing, you can build something virtually and you can participate in it and you can prove that it works and you can iron the wrinkles out of it over time so that by the time that there's no other option than to just burn everything down or it collapses on its own, there's an existing system that you can just be like, oh, we'll just start using this. Like with Bitcoin or something, right? Where if it becomes so commonplace and it starts working so well and it's so widely accepted that people can just decide to stop using the legacy system because it's just more cumbersome, more expensive, more of a pain in the ass. And you can just stop using it and then that makes an easy transition into something better. So we're able to create it over time before we need it instead of waiting until like there's chaos and we have to build in the midst of chaos.
Right. Like
that's what I like about it, though. Is my thing.
An example of how this whole thing stacks up, and this does require still, right, a little bit of either maybe more towards Sean's side of things, hugging your adversaries until the love oozes out of them all over the ground, right, to defend some of it, until we get to a place where we have decentralized systems that can be bulletproof against people bringing their hugs to the place where the data center is and hugging the crap out of those people.
And that's why it's so important to me.
Shut them off.
Right?
Like
the reason I get pissed off about things that are happening, for example, with the SEC and with regulators trying to shut down technology, trying to stop innovation, it's because we need to be allowed to develop in peace. We need to be allowed to make this stuff without somebody saying, we're going to come after you with violence unless you stop. We're going to throw you in jail unless you stop writing that piece of tornado code, whatever it is, Yeah. And that's why I just like to me, it's all real simple. I just don't want violence. And this shit is a way to do things that are important without the violence.
And it does take violence, though. I'm sorry, it does in this one respect.
I know it does, but
we have to face violence. We have to face violence. It depends on how we react to it as to whether or not we have to commit it ourselves. But we will have to face violence to do any of it.
So maybe it's about the attenuation of violence then, right? Maybe it's about reducing the violence as much as humanly possible across the board in everything we do.
Well, to me,
I think that's what we all want to do is
to me, it's about not complying with force, or complying with force only to the extent that force can command you. Like, I don't know if you guys are fans of Ayn Rand, but in Atlas Shrugged towards the end, the smartest guy on the planet who invents this limitless energy source can only be commanded to move about where he's told, to do what he's told, and they can't force what he knows to be produced by that, right? Like they can't say, build me this energy system. They can just say, grab that wrench and twist this nut, right? Like that's all you can command a person to do with force. You can't get inside their head and make them be anything that they don't want to be, right?
Not yet.
Well, I mean, or hopefully ever, right? And certainly we're kind of up against a clock with that, if you go by some metrics. But I don't really believe that. I'd have to see that to believe it. Point I was
Where
trying
do
to
you
make
go
is,
to learn more about MegaTexas.ETH?
MegaTexas.ETH is in the ether right now. Literally right here is the only place you can do it. You can come and listen to this show and sort of scan through the history of it and hear where we've talked about it. I've written very little about it, kind of on purpose, because it's not something that I can start. It's an idea that I concede. MegaTexas begins with you.
That's a good
Why
slogan.
the name MegaTexas?
Well, okay,
Because
so
it has to
here's a
allow
funny
North
scenario.
Texas, which is Oklahoma, to join.
Here's a funny scenario. Imagine like every single county in every state decided independently to leave the state they were in and join the newly founded Republic of Texas after Texit. And they just did that. And there was this state that sort of went from all the way on the western terminal of I-70 where it ends, I think, in Nevada, right? No, Utah.
I remember when you came up with
and then,
it. It was
and
after,
then all the
after a
way
show.
east. And there was just this string of counties that was just part of this thing that we called Mega Texas. And they all just exited, seceded from their states and joined a new state. The idea was county level secession originally. But I think it's gone even further than that, because who says anything has to be contiguous, right? Or who says anything has to be in like Dave was saying in meat space? Like why can't a metaverse, for example, leave its sovereign nation and join Mega Texas? Or why can't the Donbass region of the Ukraine, for example, decide that they want to just form governance units and join the United Counties of Mega Texas, right? There's nothing stopping them.
Except for the 31 tanks that Biden just sent. But
Well, I mean,
It's an interesting thing. Yeah.
There's Bitcoin and there's
$400 million
Starlink
for
internet,
tanks,
right?
but we need to raise the debt
That
ceiling.
Elon Musk refuses to censor except at gunpoint.
yeah,
That's the kind of violence we might face.
I will say that I believe that DAOs on a blockchain, this is this is part of the answer for sure. I mean, that has to be decentralized, censorship resistant, and firewalled to a point where it's so sporadic, so spread out that governments can't shut it down. That we still have access.
I think they're terrified at the idea of Elon Musk creating a splinter net out of ETH and bloating them onto Starlink.
Here's an interesting thing that coming back full circle to what I Am for I Am started the show with Bernie, Texas. He mentioned that there's money in Bernie, Texas. How our lives have changed so dramatically, where the regular farmer, anyone, they're so connected with really kind of cutting edge technology. We're all connected here. So YouTube could kill Bernie, Texas easily, because YouTube made Bernie, Texas. Bernie, Texas is a little town where your grandma and your auntie would go to the boutiques and antique stores. Now, I don't know if you know who Demolition Ranch is. It's the biggest gun tuber on YouTube. Yeah. And then there's Off the Ranch, which is a second channel. I mean, 15 million subscribers. Huge. He has Bunker Branding, which he consolidated a bunch of other YouTubers. All the merch goes through them. It's a huge corporation. Millions and millions and millions of dollars. He's from Bernie, Texas. And then he would invite YouTubers from like huge YouTubers, and he would invite them down, and they would all, oh man, I love Texas. This is so cool. And then they all started moving to Bernie. There's literally, I think, 15 YouTubers. Black Rifle Coffee Company. They're in Bernie, Texas because of him. Their ranch is right outside San Antonio, Bernie, Texas. All these people have went to Bernie, Texas. It's just an odd phenomenon. But they opened all their businesses there. All this influx of money came from YouTube and YouTubers. And that's what really made Bernie, Texas kind of blow up. And it's just regular people with crazy amounts of money that have moved there, and they're all like, nice people basically.
Now let me ask you guys this. How much is one Satoshi worth right now?
Good question.
I don't even know.
It's 0.000001 Bitcoin, correct?
Right. And one Bitcoin is roughly 22,000 today.
There's 100 million of those in one Bitcoin. How many Bitcoin do you think it would take to completely overrun a county election?
Oh, you're talking about?
Well, the problem. I get what you're saying. The problem is consolidating that Bitcoin to that one location. Think of it as how like the New Hampshire. What was the movement called? Let's all the libertarians move to New Hampshire.
Right. And they're actually succeeding with that.
Free state.
The free state movement.
Okay, well, that's what you're talking about. But that started what, in the 80s?
Right, but 90s? That's with a state-sized political unit. We're talking about creating a virtual state that could contribute to the overtake of one half of one county. That is the idea of MegaTexas.
The mechanics. This is where I have, the
Dow of a million
right
contributes how much to overrun one election.
That's something that I do want to see as an experiment, because there's so many small towns that have been bypassed and excluded from like the mainline economy, I guess. Interstates and also digitally and stuff like that. Like there's a friend of mine is heavily investing in one of the neighboring towns of Gainesville here, Waldo. Small town, used to be something. Now they don't even have a grocery store. They just got a good flea market. That's about it. And so he's trying to like revitalize that. He bought a couple of buildings. He wants to bring the grocery store back, bring in like an arts-based economy to get things going again. I want to see that with like when people get bored with their money that they've made from their crypto riches and stuff, it would be great to see an experiment of like, let's go build something interesting and see how it works, where the entire, just a little town, could be a one stoplight town somewhere. It all runs on a DAO. It all runs on chain. It all runs in a provably fair fashion just to demonstrate that working in the physical world. I really want to see that.
Do you think that's going to happen when people get bored because they're so comfortable with their crypto riches, or because they're so broke and America is so broken we have nowhere else to go except build something new with what we have with technology?
I just get irritated when I see how much money is spent on stupid shit, and I feel like, you could do something meaningful with it instead.
You guys remember when Kickstarter wasn't partially regulated by the SEC? Some of the shit people got away with funding.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
You guys remember Constitution DAO, where literally it took one fucking bigwig asshole to step in and save the day for the elites before a bunch of random DAO token holders owned a chunk of U.S. history that was irreplaceable. We have literally seen this on the cusp. It is teetering on the brink. Somebody's going to pull it off, and that will be the proof of concept.
Agreed. There's a group of individuals talking about doing something with your crypto. When you're in high school and you got the in crowd and you want to be a part of it, maybe you got some friends in that group, but you're really not in the group. Well, I have some friends kind of like that are expats. They've already moved outside of the U.S. just because of tax laws and the endless wars. And I can't be with that. I'm not part of them per se, because I haven't, moved outside and got another, passport outside of the country. And
as a healthy agorist, you can't really go anybody's way but your own, can you?
Right. And that's what they chose to do with their money. They like, I'm done with America. I'm done with the United States and the lobbyists and all that money, and I'm moving on. Yep. And kind of be the nomad. Maybe if I was younger and single, I would be that nomad and do just that.
And that's where the idea of MegaTexas is a little different. This isn't so much about burning down somebody else's committees. This is about building some of our own. I think that's where the idea really spawned from. Is this idea that, ultimately the thing that we've been wrestling for power over since about 2010 is the ability to mass crowdfund. That's what crypto brings at its very best to people. The ability to say, you know what, I don't give a fuck if you think this is a stupid idea. We're going to raise all the money in the world, and we're gonna breed digital cats with it. And guess what? You can't tell us they're not valuable. And they're not valuable to me in any way, but they're still market valuable right now because there are people who insist. And it's really just a matter of what we choose to insist upon.
I would also say that, this whole nationalist movement and the Texit movement with the, Texas National Movement, I think that people get disgruntled with Washington. Here, I'm speaking as a Texan and as American. We get disgruntled with Washington, and then our guy or someone who's more closer aligned to our values or our belief systems or politics gets elected, and that settles down. But then the other side is getting rapid and upset. And then they get their guy in, and then, you know what I mean? And then it kind of swings back and forth. And I think that's part of the problem, because that fire keeps getting lit and it get put out. Think of it as the when Obama was elected, then it was the Tea Party, and Trump was elected, and then it was the other side was upset, and I'm going to move to Canada, and all of these things. So and both sides get settled down. It seems to be on purpose. The ebb and flow of that politics.
Right. Or like another really good example. The Occupy Wall Street movement, where they couldn't articulate a single thing for their movement because everybody had a different idea. And guess what? That's like the world. Like, that's where we live, man. Right. If all those people had been able to keep the emotion up and went home and just kept the attitude, which they probably did, that would still be going on, but there wouldn't be a single place they could go to clear it out. There's so many different viewpoints in the modern world. I think Emil Durkheim described it as onomy, and I actually have that tattooed on my Which arm is it? My left arm, because society actually, and it's invisible. It's UV ink, but
what is it? What was it? I didn't.
Anomie, ANOMIE. The idea is essentially that a society gets freer and more combined. We get that melting pot effect to its maximum. You get these sort of splinters of subcultures that become subcultures, and eventually there's no unified culture anymore. And rather than resist it and say that's necessarily bad, we just need to find our people and go there. We need a right exit that's more secured than the one we have today.
Greg, I asked you to. I'd like to hear your comments on the a posting I made here recently, just yesterday. I think I was on the DAO idea for a legislative DAO. Not in the show, but later I'd like to hear your comments about it, because that's kind of where I was going a long time ago, and then I just don't know.
We should do like a live stream and record it or something, and then just post it.
Sure.
Or not necessarily even a live stream, just record it and put it up later. Cool. So should we move to another question, guys? Or does
I think Jacob Wayne has one.
His was really good. These were just comments to that.
The restaurant,
Yeah.
So Greg.
Okay, so Jacob Wayne says, I talked to you, briefly about MegaTexas, and it was a bit early, so I'm curious how one will be able to join the efforts of MegaTexas begin the revolution.
I like that question too. Like, okay,
what do you think? Is my answer. What do you guys think? I want to hear how everybody here thinks the revolution with MegaTexas could start. That's my question to the room.
That is the question, though. You know what I mean? Like, what's
the
best
I'm
way
asking
to
everybody else to say their own thing.
I think we have parties that are involved, and everyone talks about whatever, something local. They're trying to do this here. Dave would probably be perfect. He's very, very involved in local stuff. And then there's something here that, that they're trying to fix or trying to, cleaning the park, something. And like, that's the first thing. That's how we get started. That's when everybody starts tweeting about this. That's when we start, getting donations. And that's when Dave approaches that group, says, hey, we want to get behind this. And then that's like the first thing that MegaTexas does to influence the world in some political way or whatever. And then you go from there. That's the first thing, the first snowball that you roll down the hill.
An achievable common goal that is hard to argue with, or against, rather.
No, you can argue against it, but that's something small to get started, and it's something real.
Yeah, I like the taking action thing. I think you have to start with education and community. One of the things my husband and I have been doing these little going to small towns. We're we're in a suburb of the city, Oklahoma City. If you live in Oklahoma, it's the city. But we're really like wanting to get out and away even more. And so we've been like weekend going, kind of checking out some places, and we'll go to the farmers markets because you can kind of see the community. And so I was like, man, how do you get to be a part of this? How could we bring crypto into the farmers market, or even like have a MegaTexas booth at the farmers market where you could talk about things with people, but you'd have to have a food product to pull that off. Yeah. So I found this, it's kind of like a farmer's market thing, but it's more like I don't know, like a fair thing or something. I don't know, but it's a trading thing, like a barter thing. But I think you have to have that conversation. I think it's education first. I love Sean's idea about starting small with a project, because I think giving people buy-in and activity, then they feel like they're part of it. Anytime they can be a part of something and have ownership, then they are and can take action themselves. Then they're part of the movement. I think that's huge.
But also, if you can accomplish something, and that's another thing. And let's say there's 80 people that is working towards this goal in Jacksonville or wherever Dave tells us about. They're trying to fix some bridge, something. And there's like 80 people in this community that are trying to get this done. And they've been trying to get it done for a while. And then basically Dave goes in and says, hey, we're MegaTexas. It's a DAO, and just explains it. Not only did you just get, let's say there's 20 of us that are part of MegaTexas, right? Say there's 20, 25 people. We just got 80 people on board. We tripled the numbers and got started. And we have a track record. You know, all of that happens in one just little minute thing. And now we're 3 times as big. And we've accomplished something, and you can roll on to the next thing. But so you've educated those people. They now know how it works, and they're kind of beholden to the idea because they worked in their system for a long time and obviously got nowhere because nobody cared. And then this new way of doing things actually worked.
Right. That's what I was going to ask you, Sean.
Yes.
Do you think that the appeal there would be basically that they're able to organize in a more effective way to get stuff done that they've been struggling to do in a while? You think that's
imagine if you're trying to get a stoplight, you know what I mean, in your town or just something, and then you've worked for. I brought it up the other a couple of weeks ago. That's how in Canada, if you're in their VA, if you call up whatever it's for, they literally try to sell you suicide. And this woman had been trying to get a ramp built for 5 years. She's a vet, and they literally say, "Hey, why don't you just do suicide?" But imagine just a person or a group of people that have been trying to do something within the system for like years, and then this crazy, weird, magic internet technology comes in, and it's like a knight in shining armor. It's like, hey, this works. This new system, it works. Look, we got it done in 2 months. We got it done in 30 days. You know, it's like, whoa. And then that would go on legacy news systems. Hey, this actually worked. These people got this light put in when this community's been working for 3 years or 5 years, and then it's called MegaTexas.ETH, blah 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 blah. And
you know, I'll give you my idea, shooting from the hip.
Do it,
Greg.
Yes, and
you know these small towns that get bypassed by a brand new interstate, and maybe they only have like 3,000 people, 5,000 people, something like that.
I grew up in
their
one of those.
economy becomes depressed. Nobody's stopping in these towns anymore, and a depressed economy really equals an opportunity. And if you could get a handful of people to move into these small towns, and there was let's say there's solid bandwidth of internet going into that town, and you make kind of working off of Sean's point, hey, this is a one light town, or a one stop sign town, let's make that into a stoplight or whatever. But if we could get that kind of a small group of charismatic individuals who want to settle into this town and bring the technology of a DAO and start maybe get elected to the little town board, the mayor or what have you, get the sheriff on board or something of that nature. Wow. And Texas is loaded with these small counties with small populations. I don't know if you've ever seen a map of Texas with all of its counties. I can't remember how many counties are in Texas. It's some crazy number, like 120 counties in Texas.
Computer. How many counties are in Texas?
What's that?
Yeah.
Hey, Wiretap, how many counties?
You can fit them in a byte, let's just say. We can encode it in a
Computer,
byte.
Stop. Started to name the counties.
But anyway, like I said, and then that way, think of it like the Free State, project, but make it to the free county, and make it centered. The whole politics, the whole election process is DAO based. And let that seed take place and say, hey, look at this county over here. They're attracting people that are, developers and bringing, because they got a solid internet, and this type of thing. I think that are individual sovereign believers.
I don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but so
please don't ruin my
I know my
I
whole
only know
image
you as
of you.
Lisa.
I know. But so one of the things I'm pushing back a little bit because I want to hear your discussion on this. But so years ago, we had a real problem with too many kids in care and foster care in Oklahoma, and not enough caseworkers and people, kids being left at the office for a long time, at hospitals without people to sit with them. So my nonprofit, we helped develop an app with some friends of mine, and we took on the cost of vetting these people through doing their background checks and whatever, all of it except for the one part that the DHS had to do themselves for when they were minors or whatever they only had access to. And then we had this app, and then the caseworker, if you were available, you could say, yes, I'm available. Caseworker could say, I have a kid that needs somebody to sit with them at the hospital in this county, whatever. Caseworker puts in the thing, you say yes. Anyway, we did all this stuff. So what lends to some of this stuff and some of what you guys are talking about is like for more privatization, whether it's through a DAO or private entities taking on this stuff, whether it's a nonprofit, private company, whatever. But ultimately, even what you're saying is it gets back to then having the DAO or that strength, that wherever that strength or money or leadership or band of people, putting people in place in legislation, in places of power, mayor, sheriff, whatever. And so until we can get people to step up as leaders and see that we have to get involved in the process, I don't know that the DAO replaces that unless we're really, well, that's what we're saying though, is we're still operating in the state of, in the city of whatever, unless we're really willing to say we don't, become Amish and say we don't accept your laws and we're not a part of that state.
Allow me to challenge your point of view.
Yeah.
We've heard 1, 2, 3. We still need to hear from who have we not heard from yet? We heard from Joe, Dave.
Yeah, I got a couple of ideas.
We got two, but I've heard 1, 2, 3 yes and ideas that could be tried. However many people view this, more yes and ideas, right? Like maybe you can't change the entirety of a child welfare system in a state, but maybe you can make one kid have a college fund, right? Like we're talking about individual action writ large, not necessarily a threshold for group action, right? Like we don't have to hit a certain level. Like even if it's something just completely inane, like let's go to one of these small towns and not take it over, but let's go to one of these small towns and take it over for just long enough to make them change their flag to a smiley face emoji. Like random acts of joy.
I'm not sure, Greg. I'm not sure if that's exactly what Lisa was concerned about.
I'm saying like my point is there's no bad idea here, right? These are all things that we have to get in the mode of trying. Like the point of MegaTexas is to get people motivated to try their ideas. Because
so
it's not MegaTexas,
not
the
to
DAO.
become
It's
your
MegaTexas,
own
a
nation.
multitude of DAOs that spring up.
It's like you were saying. There's a discussion of ideas. So if there's 5 different states, basically with the same problem that Lisa was talking about, if one of those states and some people there find a solution that really, really works, that could change it for all these different states.
Right.
But it's the collectiveness of people working together.
But it may take a town deciding to become a city state before you can fix it for one city, right? But that's only going to happen if they decide to paint their walls purple one day and nobody can stop them.
You leaving?
Would this be a fair example of Florence, Italy? The kind of the birthplace of the Renaissance is MegaTexas represents Florence, Italy.
MegaTexas is sort of like a virtual Florence, Italy. Yeah.
Right.
It's like Florence, Italy writ large. If the internet existed in those days and the only people who knew how to properly use it were into this idea.
Yeah, you're basically saying like instead of having to vote with your feet necessarily and physically relocate, you can just say, "Oh, we're gonna join MegaTexas and use that system." And my thoughts on what you were saying, Lisa, is that
Raise your
you're
personal
absolutely
flag.
right in that you're still going to always have issues of people trying to organize to like game the system or get their buddy in office to make the rules and stuff like that. What a DAO can do, and what this new decentralization tech can do, is it can bring accountability and transparency to a system where people are currently required to trust someone, and just believe that the story they're told about how things are working and who's doing what and why they're doing it is true because they said so. If you can bring accountability to that system in a way that, like, imagine how much more work we would get done as a nation, as a society, if we weren't arguing over whether or not the elections were rigged. Because at this point, I don't even care if they were rigged anymore. What I care about is that we have the technology to remove that that stick in the mud for us. You know, we can do it.
We're not talking about though, Dave, is that the education part of it, because you know it works. But imagine, like Joe talks about all the time.
Point, yeah,
he goes into a room and says, "Hey, this will fix everything," and everyone's like, "I don't know what you're talking about, dude."
We need a momentum
Imagine
of wins.
If you bring up
first,
bringing stuff onto blockchain, but people are like, "Oh, is this the thing that got the stoplight in that one town?"
And that is kind of what Greg is saying.
So
that
can I tell you guys
is
a story?
Something.
Actually, Joe, you go first.
I'll make it real quick. That I think is probably one of the key things for a lot, especially blockchain world. So much of this stuff it's very abstract. It's very, it's very powerful, and yet humans don't actually can't. It's not that they don't believe it, like a show me state Missouri type thing. It's more like they can't fathom the reality of a concept unless they actually see it. It's like, it would be, the whole thing about a light bulb or a microwave being like magic to a caveman. It's not something that even makes any sense, right? But if you show it to them, then all of a sudden they can say, well holy shit, I can do that. I can do this, right? And
we wouldn't know what light bulbs were if Edison hadn't tried, how many billions of filaments, right? Like, and that's sort of the point of MegaTexas, right? I just want to come back to this real quick. Like, sort of the point isn't so much to make big change right away. It's to get a successive set of changes in motion such that people see immutable results that can't be taken back. Like, dumb idea that I had when I was first getting into the phenomenon of Kickstarter, and then they threw my project off. I was going to try to get M drive tested. You guys remember M drive?
I'm not sure.
Magnetic resonance drive that NASA Eagle Works tested and said they were getting the minor force out of. People were arguing whether it was a scam or not.
I do remember that. There was all the debate about whether or not it was true or not. Yeah.
The day that Elon Musk launched a car into orbit, I was like, let's hook two of them to the back of a DeLorean and put it in orbit around the moon. How much would we have to do to crowdfund that? They wouldn't let me launch that, unfortunately, on Kickstarter. That was too big of a project. I would have had to get.
You're the kind of guy that I love to see trying to do shit like that, because your attitude of like, well, let's just do it, and then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't work.
How much paint do you think it would take to turn the moon green, literally?
I don't know, but I was talking to somebody
about a villain from Earthworm Jim.
Yeah. I mean, like, what kind of crazy shit can we do that can't be undone? That will just make people feel joy and feel like they can't be stopped. Like, I feel like that's what we got to get to. That's where we got to go first.
I don't know if defacing the moon is the answer, but I see what you're saying.
No, I mean, I'm coming up with absurd ideas off the cuff, right? Like, the point is, there are better ideas to paint the
DIN logo.
It's a home improvement. Yeah, it's a home improvement.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's
because I think that is the thing too. Once normies understand what's really possible with this tech,
yes,
everything changes. But the problem right now is there's so much propaganda that's been fed into this industry by nefarious for nefarious purposes. I would say generally, not always, but they've corrupted the whole philosophy and concept of it. Yeah,
well, and the strength of decentralization, getting rid of that middleman so that our voice can be heard, I think is probably the strongest argument,
Yeah.
Well,
that's honestly, that's where I'm working on MegaTexas every day myself right now. Like with Rivet, what we're doing is we're trying to build infrastructure that is decentralized, right? The goal being ultimately that there's nobody left to point a gun at when you want to tell someone to take it down.
If you remember Bundy, but he was running for office in his state, but he came out with this. It was an app and a decentralized kind of group of people. It's just like a kind of like the same idea, but if you get pulled over, you just hit your app. I'm pulled over, and everybody gets pinged. Anyone in the area just goes there and they watch. Pull up. If 2 or 3 people. Oh, the police are at my house or whatever it is. You just hit it, and then
one guy volunteers to be the road runner, and he runs in with a tall boy and pours it down your throat by force and runs off with your keys. Right? Nobody gets a DUI ever again.
But it was like giving people kind of a sense of community where also if you don't trust the government,
right.
It's
holding officials,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's holding officials accountable. I remember seeing Rice Crypto interview Bundy on that. I thought, wow, what a brilliant idea, and it has taken root. I like it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I thought it was cool. I mean, and you're going to get pushback from, police unions, but what's wrong with it? It's watching the watchers, which we had, and that's the thing that really pisses me off so bad is that our forefathers set up this country, and it was so awesome, and they gave us blueprints and rules. They literally said, "Don't start a party system; it could ruin the republic." And look, it doesn't. The candidate doesn't matter. It used to matter to my wife. I have kids. Where this is my religion. None of it matters. Literally, it's a team. It's the Eagles versus the Giants. It's everybody votes with their party. It doesn't matter if it hurts. It doesn't matter if it hurts the people that voted them in. If you come from a coal district, literally you'll vote against the people in your district because your party wants you to. There's no respect for politicians at all. If you vote on something that would harm the environment and kill people in another state, and it's the worst thing ever, I would 100% respect you for doing that if it helps your district. That's why you're there. But
here's another MegaTexas.ETH idea. How many people do you think you could convince to change their name to something easy to remember for a write-in? Legally.
What now?
Good for you.
How many Satoshis do you think it would take to convince someone to legally change their name to something easy to remember for a write-in and run under my new party that I'm going to call the super secret I wear a body cam to caucus meetings party? And then we just put the word out that exists and maybe don't even run anybody using all of the marketing machine that they built for the internet.
I mean, it sounds like a good gimmick. I just don't know if
how scared would they be to talk about stuff if they thought someone was in there with a body cam after the most recent election?
It's
we
funny
could
you say
that kind of ridiculousness, and people would just be like, "What the hell is going on here?" Another way that MegaTexas can exercise power. There are so many vectors.
So absurdity is your marketing.
This right here. This is Sean's argument here. This is the full truth. That's the party. It's so crazy, people, and I think people are waking up to this. That the party's not really anything of meaning.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so should we go to the next question? Are there more?
Yes.
Well, I wanted to pitch my farmers market idea.
Oh Jesus! Go ahead.
Yes.
we got to answer the question first.
In a yes and sort of way, I guess, demonstrating stuff, starting small, showing results, that kind of thing, showing that it's possible. And I've mentioned this before, but like creating a circular economy with an existing parallel system. I am brought up in a post on Den a while back, something about parallel systems, and use the example of a farmer's market as a kind of like a side chain to the legacy system. It's something that exists in parallel on the side that you can participate in. It's got its own thing going on. And so that seems like it's pretty ripe to apply something like decentralization too. It's already operating with its own infrastructure and consumers and suppliers and things like that. If you could get enough people together to where you have, the point would be like to show that you don't have to sell your convert something from like a crypto token to a fiat token kind of thing. If you could have, what if a farm had a CSA, for example, that was paid in a token, whether it's Bitcoin or Monero or whatever, and they also were able to purchase fertilizer and seeds and things like that from the supplier with the same currency, and they were also able to, like, at the end of the day, if you could pay your power bill in it too, but that's a whole nother level. But right. Getting as many components together to where you have this circular system working, and then just take that to the market, open a booth and be like, hey, we operate completely on our own system that is not burdened by the infrastructure that is holding all of you back. Right. And that would be a very interesting demonstration of.
One could pull that off very easily already by having one of the kiosks at that fair or at that farmer's market be a place where they accept mail-in donations of Visa gift cards that you can trade for cryptocurrency right there.
Yeah, and you can make it an OTC of some sort like that too. Yeah, if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But I think that farmers, getting back down to like rural communities that are already cut off from the convenience of centralized infrastructure, they already prefer cash. You know what I mean? They already are having to deal with not having the types of amenities that people living in the middle of a major city have. So that's probably where you go first. Is those communities and stuff like that.
They're independent minded, that's for sure.
That's yeah, and they have the mindset for like, no, I'm gonna do what the fuck I want, and if you don't like it, you can go do what you want over there. I'm gonna do what I want over here though. And that's a great starting point.
Right. Another project idea before we go on to Joe, and then we'll move on. What if you took out about $100,000 worth of cash and then gave it right back to the bank after you etched $1 worth of a crypto wallet onto that card in terms of a private key? Just knock that thing in there. There's $1 worth of crypto right there on the dollar bill. Give it back to the bank.
Well, defacing
It'd be
money,
a fun project to fund, wouldn't it?
Like the Where's George thing. You ever get a dollar bill that says Where's George?
Yeah, like a geocache on the bill. Kind of like
Bitcoin. I have a buy Bitcoin stamp.
Right.
There you go.
Not everybody will know what it is, but some people might switch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very popular.
All right.
This is a long discussion. I don't know if we'll go there. But
Okay, so I am 4am. This is awesome.
There was a white paper I posted. I only posted this because I heard that MegaTexas was actually a DAO, and this was a something that I called the umbrella promise in setting up a DAO to move money out of Washington and back to the district level.
Holy
so
shit.
that the politician would only be would only vote as the DAO votes on any kind of legislation.
Yes, I love that.
That'd be amazing.
And I'll be honest with you, I kind of vacated this idea because I just felt that the swamp was too deep, but we have to start somewhere. The graphic here kind of explains it. It basically means that.
Isn't that how Washington's supposed to work?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's not
like revolutionary. It's like you're supposed to vote like your district tells you. What?
Yeah.
I love this idea. And I love this idea at every scale.
Right. It could be at every scale. I'm all the way down to the mayor, etc. You're absolutely right. But imagine. Let me throw a real quick. I'll be very, very brief, if you don't mind.
Go for it, man. If I'd have known that we had a white paper in here, I would have proposed that for an episode. We should do this as an episode, guys. Like I want to do this white paper as an episode.
Imagine that I'm running for Congress, okay, and I say to everybody, your campaign funds for to be elected, I'm going to take $40 out of every $100 collected, or 40% of everything that's collected. I'm going to put it in this lockbox, and this lockbox is going to be used to create this DAO. And this DAO is going to tell me how to vote. I'm not going to vote by party line. I'm going to vote specifically to the DAO. Now the DAO is created specifically for the members within the, or I should say, the citizens within the district that are voted. That is valid. They're validated and they're put into the DAO as long as they live and they can vote in that district. Then they can vote in the DAO. And so when legislation pops up, my job would then be, if elected, is to post this the bill on the DAO, and then everyone would vote. If 51% voted yay on this legislation, then I, as the elected representative, vote yay. So I don't have Pelosi or McCarthy coming to me and say, you got to vote by party line. No, I'm voting as my constituents want me to vote in the DAO. Now, it wouldn't matter if that particular piece of legislation only received 10 votes from the DAO and 6 were yay and 4 were no. That's how I would vote, for 6.
Right.
I would not get involved in going back to the DAO and saying, as your elected representative, I recommend you vote this way or that way, because guess what? I'm going to be recommending what the lobbyists want me to say and what the lobbyists want me to recommend.
Yeah.
So that
the only way they can trust that
party
you're not
politics
doing
goes
that.
out. Now,
Right,
the
just not making
lobbying
recommendations
money,
at all.
right? The lobbying money now is not going to flow to me and my staff and my reason to get reelected or try to get me reelected, right? The lobbying money is got to flow back to the district to try to convince everybody else. So if I owned a TV station, a local TV station, they're going to get bombarded with a lot of ads to try to get you to vote this way. But that means that this lobbying money in Washington is going to become fragmented, and it's got to flow to all these different districts if this were to catch on. You follow?
Yeah.
That last
No,
part
the
put it
idea.
together for me. I wasn't sure until you said that.
You can
but
do
that
some
makes
other
sense.
neat stuff with this too, where you did something along the lines of like, by the way, here's my IoT connected body cam that I'm going to be required to wear everywhere I go.
Right. You do all kinds of stuff like that.
The live stream politician.
Right. And now the politician is not party based.
true virtual
The politician is actually, and here's the other beautiful part. So if I succumb to the party that, I've been elected to, and it didn't matter, and the DAO told me to vote yay, and I went ahead and voted no, well, then instantly the DAO could say, you know what, this guy's not doing what he was supposed to do, so we're going to put in for impeachment. And the DAO, boom, puts in impeachment. The next thing you know, I'm called to election for impeachment because I didn't vote for the DAO.
Yep.
And me, as maybe an individual within the district, not the politician or the candidate or the elected official, maybe me, I happen to like technology and I happen to follow, border security. And so I might vote on those issues. Now, I may not be so interested in balanced budgets or the budget or this kind of thing. So I might abstain and not vote in the DAO for that. So what's going to happen is even what I think
you could use a staking system for that.
Liquid democracy
with other people.
You can do proxy.
Like delegate your votes.
Right. That gets kind of scary, though. I've thought about the proxying the vote. That gets kind of scary because now is that proxy vote going to be influenced by lobbying money within districts?
Well, if you did it MakerDAO style, right, or at least old MakerDAO style before they went evil, where you could they still do it like this, where literally the DAO is always in on a vote until it pulls its votes out and puts them into another set of parameters. They're into the new rules. You can, as long as you can make it so people can withdraw immediately as soon as they feel uneasy about it.
So this is basically the white paper, the idea I had. As a matter of fact, Dave, if you recall, when early on,
this is a big all caps yes and right here.
We had a conversation a long time ago, maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was on a Coffee with Dan or Din DAO conversation. I talked about a blockchain DAO.
This resonates in something I know we've talked about. So
we probably have, but I kind of lose track of what I talk about sometimes because I'm always
so
much.
You can tie, by the way, any of the DAO funds for that rep to which would either pay for their support, marketing their reelection, because maybe all of their funds could be that way, and it could compete with another DAO, who's also running, but those funds, not only would it be transparent, but then could also be turned around, like you said, if the DAO voted to recommend impeachment or to, pursue impeachment, then all those funds go to marketing for the impeachment.
Right.
It would be beautiful.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And you
I
can
think
even do
it's
little
a
single
great
purpose
way.
versions of this, right? Like picture just sending one person to not even ever plan to be reelected, to do just one deed. Like I am literally there to stand up when I get sworn in, and before the last note is sung on the national anthem, rip my belt off and my pants fall down around my ankles, and then I go home.
Guys,
if you could get the Dow to do something like that, even
yeah,
it would be enough of a symbol.
Imagine
this is a real. If you guys are familiar with the notion of propaganda of the deed, this is an opportunity for an act of joyism.
What if it were? I mean, if you considered it in the pattern of another party, because essentially the Dow could work as a party, and you might have a couple of different DAOs in a particular area, but then essentially you would be saying, look, people could apply to run under this, and you have to obligate yourself legally to follow the vote. When you're voting over there, you have to obligate yourself to run all funding through the DAO, so on, so on, so on. People could essentially apply to, hey, I would do this, right? And so the DAO can then vote, okay, we're going to run this guy just like a party would, but you have the funding apparatus and you have the mechanism where everybody knows this person is going to actually represent them.
Right. So
are
now,
you guys
protect yourself from lobbyists buying
really
into the DAO
edge.
Sorry.
Noodle Baker for next time, guys. We're really in the edge.
Yeah.
If you're familiar at all with what Party DAO does, they spin up single-purpose, limited-use DAOs for one auction on an NFT marketplace. Imagine instead of one DAO, there were a switcher that could randomly spin up a DAO of people who are eligible, but not necessarily involved until the moment of need. That could, for instance, forestall any efforts to centralized resist this approach. There are technology mechanisms out there that we should all be exploring that will help us do things that confound and bamboozle those who would like to solve the problem of us coming up with ideas like this by pointing guns at it. And I think those are all things that we need to think about.
Lisa, you had a question?
Oh, I was just curious about, are we assuming that the lobbyists would continue to pour money in this funnel when they're not getting their way? Wouldn't they find other avenues like what Facebook did with, Zuck paying off, felons charges so that they could have their voice heard, different creative avenues that, that there would not be this funnel of money from the traditional lobbyists and things like that.
Right. The initial person that gets elected this way, I think, would send ripples through the pond, I guess the initial candidate that gets elected in this way is not going to have any committee seats or power in DC in the beginning, but I think we the people will get pretty excited when we heard that, over here in such and such district, this individual is a non-party person and he doesn't or she doesn't accept any kind of lobbying money. They vote per the DAO. And what's also neat is, like, if I think that term limits should be top priority, or border security, or a balanced budget, or whatever item, the DAO would actually push those items to the top. And if you get enough elected representatives that answer to a DAO and not to the lobbyist, I think that becomes attractive and more people are going to get involved.
And I guess then you don't need the funding because the DAO is doing the marketing to get your voice out, because the people are the voice.
And then the lobbying money has to flow to the districts to try to convince all of us to vote for more money to Ukraine. Or
that's what I was going to say, is even if the lobbyists did get what they want, the way to do it would be through enriching the citizens instead of enriching.
Okay. Well, and on top of that, right? Too, there's the software principle that we import. The idea of iterate, review, iterate, review, iterate, review. If they come back at us in a way we don't see coming, that forestalls it, we don't give up. We bring out version 1.1.1.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's flexible to change.
We just adapt,
It's
and we
very
adapt
small.
faster.
That's something as well that I would expect it would probably uh, uh, happen in a small district first, because they're not likely to receive the same level of lobbyist funds that a big district that
Mhm.
important would. So that would be interesting, because it could be a way for them to get a little more power. But you'd have to figure out how to get how to typically some of the odd representatives, maybe not from a big district, that have an important seat, end up making so much money from lobbyists and or whatever stock tips they get, that they're not beholden to their citizens, right? So it's a weird thing that you have to flip that somehow. And that money is going to always be more than what the citizens could offer. It's like a lot of these a lot of these politicians don't get the majority of their money from their citizens.
And here's another thing I think would be a benefit. Talking about education and putting it into practice, people are going to start feeling more comfortable with this app on their phone, saying, you know what, I think we should vote no for this bill, or I think we should vote yes. And they're going to be a little bit more active because it's more convenient, right? But they're going to understand blockchain and DAOs and how that works. And now they're going to say, you know what, we need to transition this in our district into how we run elections. And now we can plug in free and fair election processes with a DAO and blockchain, which right now, that's not going to happen, because there's no way these politicians are going to vote themselves out of office with term limits. And there's no way they're going to want to change the way the election system happens, because it's rigged. And they're going to fight
it. Why we need to take their rigging mechanism and re-rig it in our favor.
Talk. You could say, I think, well, I want term limits. I hope I get voted out. And they're not going to do that.
But the DAO would certainly. Yeah. I think it could. You get one, and boom. I think it could get some attention, and this thing could.
You said it'll send ripple through the first person gets elected.
Oh, imagine Constitution DAO if it had succeeded, or even better, if it had failed, and then somebody started it up on something new right away.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of, to be honest with you, I kind of look at parallel systems, counter economics. My feeling is, as an agorist, I want peace, and as a voluntarist, everything should be voluntary. And for me, this is my opinion on Washington.
Awesome. Dude, yes. And okay, so we are way past time, and I've sacrificed my bonus, but I should probably bring the episode to a close before we hit 2 hours, and the alarm bells start going off at YouTube headquarters, and they try to come shut us down or something. So let's just quickly go through, starting to my right with Dave. What's new with you? What's coming up this week? Where can people follow you?
Well, I'll throw out a suggestion. I think that with MegaTexas and with IAM's white paper there, I'm going to go ahead and recommend that might just be MegaTexas's draft white paper at this point. Maybe you guys can just merge, and because that's really, really good. And so I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for writing it, really brilliant work. and for posting it. As for me, go check out yesterday's Coffee with Den episode. I thought it was kind of cool. I play video games, so what's not to like? I don't know if I'm the first, but I think I might be the first one to do virtual geocaching, and I intentionally did it in a metaverse that people don't think of as a metaverse. It's a traditional video game that happens to have a persistent shared universe across all platforms: PC, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, PlayStation. All of them access the same metaverse, right? And so I went and hid some, just as a proof of concept. I made a simple little puzzle, and I hid some matter, 256 matter tokens, with a little bit of ether for gas money to send off to your own account once you find it and solve the puzzle. So I gave away half of the seed phrase that I hid on yesterday's episode. So you got a head start, and I even gave away how to find the rest of them. So go check out Coffee with Den from yesterday on the Coffee with Den layer, and go get about $15 worth of crypto. And I will start hiding some more shit in there too. So That's what I'm doing. Coffee with Den stuff.
Cool. Joe?
On that, I wonder if you were to give the address to that, I would send in, and I guess we'd have to figure out how, if I could tip it in or if I could send it in, but to add a bunch of lore to it or something. But either way, also on the white paper I have a couple of proposals as well that we didn't go over today, like in depth, if we go further with all of this. Some interesting thoughts. And I'm trying, by the way, to use some of these in projects that are less
Nope, we're still wrapping up.
fundamental, like say not dealing with DCE or anything else, but dealing with a new organization. So a couple of new projects we're setting up that happen to be DAOs that would implement some of these governance capabilities, right, in a way for something that really matters, but isn't related to war. So anyway, and other than that, hopefully we'll get to announce a couple of those in the coming weeks. We'll see how that goes, or coming months. But yeah, that's it. There's a lot going on.
I thought it was just me.
I thought it was just me too.
It's everybody. Yeah.
Me too. That's funny.
Wow. I guess we struck a nerve.
So I was done anyway. We can go to next. Although we've lost now the ordering.
I'm sure
you want the whole ordering.
Oh, we're still live. Wow.
Okay, so we got Sean next now.
Go check out with Jeff McCabe.
Cool.
They just launched their Lightning Works Comics Portal NFTs, which are really cool. It's connected to their Siege World game, which is a cool MMO game. It's free to play. You can download that. And then there's like Easter eggs in the comics for like special weapons and stuff. It's the whole thing they're doing is really, really cool. They have amazing artists from DC and Marvel that have been working on the comics. But the portal idea is really cool. If you get these portals, you get like free comics and special editions that drop later on. Really, really neat. Did a meme review, which was fun. I did it like 4 a.m, so I was kind of spaced out a little bit. Me and Lisa did not do our Truth Tuesday. But maybe we'll do something this weekend or something.
Yeah.
If not, wait till next Tuesday.
Cool. That's awesome, man. All right. I am for I am. You are next, sir. And
well, I haven't started my YouTube channel and Rumble channel yet. I do plan on doing that. The whole idea here of the background, parallel projects. I want to focus on parallel projects either in crypto or outside of crypto that are working to or going to get or starting brand new that are going to try to replace different legacy systems and highlight those and just give you my thoughts and full philosophy and ideas and of where I've traveled to and what I've seen and learned over experience. But dealing with the health issues with my wife right now. So that's focused and priority. And after that, well, then we'll march on. But I think I'll be able to get this thing launched here pretty soon. Parallel projects. Otherwise, the place to find me is I am for I am on din.social. I'm not really much of a social media guy. So that's where you want to find me.
Cool, man. Well, hey, awesome. And if I can help, let me know. And also best to your wife. Hope she gets well soon. Lisa, what's new?
Yeah. Congrats to I am for I am on your first grandbaby.
Yes.
Super exciting news. Yeah. And Sean, sorry, I missed you Tuesday. On Sunday morning at 0:00:001 seconds, we started our raw food reboot. And that means no alcohol, no caffeine, all raw food only, with Amy Weir, Bix Weir's wife. And so it's a 21-day raw food cleanse, reboot of your system. And I was on the struggle bus with the a headache, terrible headache, because I was on about day 3. Today's day 5. Yesterday, I learned that soaking beans is not the same thing as sprouting beans. I'm learning a lot of things about raw food and the do's and don'ts. And so if you guys want to join us, it's a 21-day cleanse, I guess, or challenge. We have a Telegram group that the community shares recipes and support each other, encourage each other. And then next week, we'll start smoothie week. And then the last week is a juicing week. So trying to get healthy and give us all a good boost to kick off the new year. So you can find me on YouTube, like Coin Lisa, or at The Mighty Lair on Den Social. And if you comment on my weekly post, then if you have the top comment, then, or if you make a great post like I Am For I Am does a lot of times, I keep pointing the wrong way, then I'll give you a lot, and you can have a ownership token at The Mighty Lair.
Awesome. Well, I missed part of that because for some reason I must have touched a nerve. They've been trying to kick me off the internet all morning. But real quick, I just wanted to remind everybody that you are connected to an internet with lots and lots of people on it. You heard 5, 6, maybe 7 or 8 great yes ands here. And if you're hearing this right now, yes and. That is the battle cry of the MegaTexans. The only thing you have to remember about it in order to get started. So go out there, have ideas, build them, make them. If they don't work, build another one. That's what I will leave you with.
See y'all later.
See ya.
Oh, yeah.
No mechanism exists to make payments over a communications channel without a trusted party. What is needed is an electronic payment system based on cryptographic proof instead of trust, allowing any 2 willing parties to transact directly with each other without the need for a trusted third party.